Have you ever noticed that people most likely to burn out are often the most capable? So, what do I mean by this? They're probably the hardest worker. They're the ones who are always showing up, the most dependable on the team, right? So, as a manager, I can hand so and so this task because I know it'll get done. They might also be the people, right? Everyone counts on. They're the ones you hand those things to. They show up, they get things done. So, if that's you, I want you to know that that is okay. Those are good skills and strengths. We just have to learn how to manage capacity. You see, burnout doesn't target lazy people. It actually targets those who are committed because those who are committed are the ones doing the work and often sacrificing aspects of their own health or their own life with their family. And we don't want to do that because the same traits that make you successful can also become the very things that drive burnout. And we want to be successful without the burnout. And so, as we walk through these patterns, if you're noticing any of it describes you, if you recognize yourself in today's video, I invite you to take the professional burnout assessment. It will be linked below. And if you're wondering, I might recognize myself, but I'm not sure, go back to the video from last week where I dig in deeper to the signs of burnout and how to recognize it. Today, I want to share a story about somebody I've worked with before, and I've seen similar things within myself and with multiple clients, right? So we'll use this case study. But I have someone who is a medical director working multiple sites, always available, felt like they were always at work, right? So not having days off, or if there are days off, the mind is always thinking about work. And so for them, it was really hard to fully turn off when they were off work. But they're also somebody who loves work, right? And I think that's important. It's important to enjoy what you're doing and to know or believe that that's what you're called to do. And so know that if that's you, there is hope. But this particular individual, or this case study that we're talking about, right? They start to question everything. And I hear this frequently with clients I work with. They say, Deidre, I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know if I can keep going. This is not what they taught us in school. It is not what I expected. And I hear that all the time, right? If you're somebody who truly loves the work you do, you're probably saying yes to all the things. So that's why you might be working or supervising multiple sites. And that goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, right? You're a hard worker. You're dedicated. You're responsible. So you get things done and then you take on more. But I want you to know that if this resonates with you, you're not failing. Just like this case study, it was not failing. They were trapped in the burnout cycle because the burnout cycle happens when we go from one chronic stress to the next, meaning we're always on alert and we're always doing. That's going to put us into the burnout cycle. But there is hope. There is a way out. And so let's start with talking about, why are high achievers the first to burn out? Same things we've talked about before, right? They have this stronger sense of responsibility and they tend to take on more responsibility. High achievers could probably be called perfectionists, and they have high standards for themselves. And so if they're not meeting that standard, they keep pushing and striving to do more. High achievers often have a hard time delegating, right? Because if we delegate, we don't have the control. And if we delegate, that might cause a little more stress and anxiety going, is it done? Is it done right? High achievers also tend to have their identity tied to their achievements. So they don't see themselves as worth it if they're not performing at a high standard and they're not having high output, right? They feel seen because of that output. But the problem is if you're stuck in this burnout trap, as this case study was, right? She was very committed, but overextended. And I've had multiple clients say that. I know I'm doing too many things. I don't know how to cut back because they are committed, right? And they're high achievers. They have high output. So how do you cut back if you're overextended? And those are things that we will eventually get into. People are also extremely exhausted. So was this particular individual, right? Exhausted all the time, feeling like there's not much energy left, recognizing she didn't have the capacity to sustain the level she was trying to function at. But yet she just kept trying to work harder, which led to more exhaustion. And you see how this trap cycle just continues. Overextend, exhausted, work harder, get more exhausted. That's a cycle we want to get out of. And that's why I created the burnout to balance model so that we can start to create sustainable success. So we have to pay attention to those warning signs first, meaning, are you starting to get cynical about work or about any aspect of life? So I've not just heard cynicism about work. Yes, I do a lot of coaching and consulting when it comes to the workplace. And that's where I see cynicism the most, but it can show up otherwise. It can show up in relationships. Are you maybe feeling emotionally numb and you don't recognize it? Because sometimes, remember, these signs are hidden. So unless you slow down and pay attention to them, you're not necessarily going to recognize them in the moment. But emotionally numb just means you're not feeling anything, right? So if you're a healthcare professional or in a helping profession and you usually have that empathy or sympathy for the people you're helping, and now like you're just callous and there's nothing there, you're probably numb, you're probably burnt out. That brain fog, right? That difficulty thinking clearly, difficulty making decisions, if that's set in, that's probably a sign something needs to change. Maybe you're irritable, right? Are you someone who usually has a lot of patience and can handle anything that comes, and all of a sudden the next thing that comes at you, you just get really frustrated and maybe you snap. You're just like, I can't handle anything else. Yeah, you're probably irritable, and probably because you've been in a state of stress or burnout for too long. And most important, are you feeling like you have lost your purpose? I hear this one all the time, right? It goes back to what I said earlier. I know this is what I'm supposed to do, but I don't know how I can keep going. That's because that purpose has gotten buried underneath the brain fog, underneath the irritability and the emotional numbness. It's still there somewhere. You just can't see it and connect to it because there's so much else going on, and your body and your mind are just trying to help you get through. And so if you're wondering, Deidre, how do I escape this trap? How do I get out of it? I don't want to stay in it anymore. And that's great. And that's why I created the Spark method. This framework helps you start to identify and see where things need to change so we can build systems around that, right? And so what do I mean? In the Spark method, if you can't see that there's a problem or see where the problem is at, where are you going to start, right? You have to see it to make a change. Once you can see it, you have to pinpoint where that root is. We don't want to just deal with the surface level changes because that's not where we create sustainability. We create it by going deep to go to the root problem. Then we're going to activate small changes that can help you start to feel better, start to recover, and start to build a more sustainable way of functioning. And then we have to reinforce that with our systems and our habits so that we can keep that momentum for long-term sustainability. That's all part of the Spark method that I help clients with every time I see them. It's about understanding, planning small changes, because I don't believe an overhaul is helpful. And so if you're thinking, I might be burnt out, I invite you again, take the burnout assessment. It's linked below. It is the first step in that awareness, in that SPARK method to see and pinpoint. You have to know where you're at. And if that resonates, the next video, make sure you subscribe, because the next video, we're going to talk about those small habits that I keep mentioning can help prevent burnout as a leader. Because I know you and everybody, you can succeed without self-sacrifice.